Hi, this is your lesson to go over how to do your poetry project. So this is the initial directions, and in class you should have received a worksheet from me that looks like this. So let's take a look at the directions together. You see it says, in the chart below, play tic-tac-toe. Now you're not actually playing against another player. This is your way of choosing what 3 poems you're going to write. So we see here it says, by playing tic-tac-toe, you will be choosing the 3 types of poems you will write for your project and what poetry element each poem needs to include. Circle your 3 choices in pencil and have Mrs. Weber approve them. Now we're going to have to do that differently because you're working from home and I'm not going to have you actually turn this paper into me in person. You're going to do it digitally. So I'm going to go over how you're going to circle them a little bit later, but let's look at what our poem choices are before you attempt to even play with that. We see down here, there are 9 boxes, just like we would have if you were, playing tic-tac-toe, but those boxes would be empty. It tells you what type of a poem. So we see we have narrative. Oh, down here, it's a narrative ballad. So that's a specific type of narrative. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then all the others we see lyric, but they're also specific. We see lyric sonnet, lyric ode, a lyric free verse. And then what makes these all different within these are the figurative language terms that you're going to use within it. So you can use more than one type of figurative language within all of your poems, but I'm requiring that you have whichever one it says in this box. So perhaps you're really good with personification, then you're going to include that in your narrative. You'd include this one. I'm also looking for metaphor, alliteration, hyperbole, or similes. So we see those choices. We have the figurative language posters behind me, and then you also have those in your interactive notebook to help you as well. So you also received from me a paper, and it may be printed on the back. I can't remember exactly how I had done that, but it says cheat sheet, and it looks like this one. So cheat sheet for some of the different forms of poetry. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through all the different forms and how to specifically write one each right now. What we're going to do is in other videos, if you've picked that you're going to do a ballad, there is a video on the ballad. If you've picked to do a sonnet, there's going to be a video on the sonnet. Even if you haven't picked those, perhaps you want to watch them because I have written one of each of those types of poems and I will be sharing my examples with you. So what I want to remind you of is what you're choosing here though. So we see narrative poetry, all narratives tell a story. And we have covered that in class, Charge the Light Brigade was a narrative. So was Paul Revere's Ride. So the narratives, they include epics and also limericks. Remember in 6th grade, you did limericks, those 5-line silly poems. We haven't covered those this year, but you certainly could write a limerick if you chose. And then if you have to do the ballad, if you choose the ballad, there's one of those below. There's a very specific format for how you do a ballad. They're meant to be written in quatrains, 4-line stanzas, and they do rhyme. So that's something to keep in mind. When you choose your poem, if you're choosing a narrative, and you should, whichever direction you go, have at least one that's a narrative, you get to decide, do you want to do the ballad and challenge yourself to have the rhyming 4-line stanzas, or do you want to have it more open where you're just making sure it tells a story? You will also have to write at least one lyric poem. So lyric poetry, remember, it presents the thoughts and feelings of the speaker. Its forms include free verse, haiku, oh, that's a typo, it should say tanka, and elegy, and how to write a sonnet and ode are detailed below. So one of the key things to keep in mind that a lyric poetry is not telling a story like the narrative above. Instead, it's more thoughts and feelings. If you pick the one for the free verse, it's totally open to you, both in the topic and doesn't need to be any rhyme, etc. However, there are 2 detailed below where you have a sonnet has a very specific form, and you have to try to meet this form, and I encourage you to try it out. You would have 3 quatrains, which would mean 3 stanzas that have 4 lines, and then it ends with a couplet, a 2-line stanza at the end. It has a very specific rhyme scheme. You have to follow this format, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. And if you choose to do the sonnet, I have another lesson that you can watch where I kind of help you figure out how do you do this rhyme scheme to go along with that. And then an ode also is very, very specific. You only have to write one stanza for the ode, but in an ode, a stanza is 10 lines long. It's a little bit longer. And then down here where you see this red underneath mine, that's your rhyme scheme. On your paper, it'll be in italics. So it has to be A, B, C, D, E, C, D, E. And we'll talk more about that in the other videos if you choose that. But keeping in mind that your ballad, your sonnet, and your ode are going to be the ones that are going to challenge you a little bit more. No matter which way you choose, you will probably have to do at least one of those. Now, an ode also includes iambic pentameter, and that's detailed down here below. I'm not going to be super nitpicky about it. So if you are nervous about the idea of trying to figure out this rhythm that goes along with iambic pentameter that is included in an ode, don't let that deter you, because I'm not going to worry too much about the meter, but I'm going to encourage you to try it. So that's your cheat sheet to look over. Let's go back to the tic-tac-toe paper. So the first thing you want to do is pick out which three you're leaning towards. What I need you to do today is that you are going to circle them, and you're going to do this digitally. So if you go up to the insert up here and you choose a shape, you choose the circle, okay? And let's say I've decided I'm going to do the narrative with personification. I'm going to draw a circle around it. Now it looks like it's covering it up, but it's opened up this box. So up here in the format, I'm going to choose the shape fill, and I'm going to choose no fill. And when I do that no fill, now I can see what I've chosen. I can also change the shape outline so it stands out a little bit more. Perhaps I want to make it blue, or I could make it red, and then I know which ones. So now remember, you have to have 3 in a row. Okay, I picked this one. Am I going to do the lyric sonnet, or the with alliteration, or am I going to do narrative with hyperbole? I can go the 3 across, or I could go 3 down, narrative with personification, lyric ode with metaphors, or lyric sonnet with alliteration. Or I can go on the diagonal, the lyric free verse with alliteration, or the lyric ode with similes. So deciding what are the figurative language that you're good at, and what type of poem are you going to challenge yourself to write. So you can do across, up and down, or on the diagonal. So it's up to you to choose. Once you've decided on your 3, please circle them, attach that. Actually, it should already be attached. You should be able to do that right in your team's assignment, and then turn that in. So that's a pretty easy part of your assignment today, just deciding which 3 poems you're going to write. I would encourage you to get started on drafting them. The other videos should be available soon. They're not on the agenda till next Wednesday, but you can certainly view them earlier and get started on your drafts. The sooner you get started, the better. There's a second paragraph in here that I want to take a look at. There's more to the project. So after you have written 3 poems, so you have to write all 3, you have to turn all 3 in final copy format, but you're going to choose your favorite one. You will present this one poem to the class in a creative way. And examples of creative ideas to accompany your poetry reading are, you could paint a picture, write a song, make a videotape. Wow, that's old. Not a videotape, but you could make a video, create a dance, make a mobile, you know, those things that hang from the ceiling. We had a whole bunch in the classroom last year. Do a pantomime, make a diorama, make a picture book, etc. Whatever you want to do to present your poem to the class. And notice that there will be a poetry reading of your one poem, not all 3. I didn't fill in the blank there because it's different for each cohort, but the week that we get back from spring break, this project should be completed. It's the last week of the quarter, and I hope to do the presentations in class that week, and that's the only thing that would need to be done. And you will need, I'd like to actually have those poems turned in before then so that I can grade the project, but the presentations will be on that day. I hope this answers many of your questions and that you get started on writing drafts for your 3 poems. And once you turn in the paper with the 3 that you've chosen, if I have any concerns, I will reach out to you. And if you have any questions, make sure that you reach out to me, but also check out my other videos.